Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line on TVP World. This is where we unpack some of the main business and economic stories of the day. I'm your host, Marie Cato. All regional eyes have been on Romania this weekend during the first round of the second attempt of the country's presidential elections. Today we want to explore what these weekend's results project for the Romanian economy. So where does the country's economy stand now, and what might the election trajectory signify for the future? Before we learn more, let Jan Kennedy tell us more about the Romanian situation.
Hard-right Eurosceptic George Simion secured a landslide victory in the first round of Romania's presidential elections on Sunday. Having won twice as many votes as second-place Liberal candidate Nicu Șurdan, Simion heads into the runoff as the clear favourite.
I want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, all those who chose to vote for position number 1 on the ballot. It was more than a choice, it was an act of courage, trust and solidarity. I am grateful to them, and I assure them that their trust will not be betrayed.
But whoever emerges victorious on May 18 will be faced with a difficult task of steering the country through a demanding economic climate. The IMF forecasts the Romanian economy to expand by 1.6% in 2025, the joint second highest in CEE, though still trailing Poland's projected 3.2%. Although growth is expected to rise to 2.8% in 2026, it's still a far cry from the 8.2% the country managed in 2017. But some of the drivers of that growth are still there. According to Eurostat, the country offers the lowest labour costs in the EU, averaging just €12 per hour. As a result, multinational corporations like Michelin have been relocating production from other CE countries like Poland to Romania. Overall, last year, approximately 40,000 companies with foreign capital were registered in Romania. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Since 2019, Romania's public debt to GDP ratio has risen by 20 percentage points to nearly 55% in January, and is set to surpass the 60% mark in 2026. This comes amidst persistingly high inflation, which stood at 4.9% in March, the highest out of all 27 EU member states, and similar to Poland. Experts say this could prove to be a major hurdle with potential interest rate cuts, now standing at 6.5%. On the other hand, some analysts reckon that a more dovish stance may be necessary to revive the previous rate of economic growth. This challenging economic outlook could pose to be a problem in addressing the country's ongoing demographic decline, which has persisted since the fall of communism. Since joining the EU in 2007, over 2 million people, or around 10% of the population, have left in search of better opportunities in Western Europe, leading to a growing labour shortage. According to Romania's National Institute of Statistics, by 2050 the country's population will decline to approximately 16 million, from 19 million now.
So overall, Romania is probably doing better economically now than we might think. Undoubtedly, the country has its economic challenges, and the first round of elections comes at a time of significant geopolitical and economic volatility. It will be interesting to observe how the incoming president will implement his economic strategy, and robust efforts will undoubtedly be required. Today, we are joined by Cristi Tudorescu, Managing Partner at Explore Asset Management. Hello, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
So to begin with, how would you briefly describe the strengths and weaknesses of the Romanian economy as it stands now, with the likelihood of moving into the leadership of a nationalist president? What would you consider the biggest challenge right now?
In the last 3 years, we had some difficult growth. So every time the government assumed a growth path like 2% per year, 3% per year, but in reality, we managed to have 1% or less than 1% last year in real terms. This is one part of the equation. And the other one, the big budget deficits. We had almost 9% of GDP last year, the highest in the European Union, and this led to higher debt to GDP ratio, as you highlighted also in the preliminary material. So these were the main challenges of the economy. Okay, we had some increase in the living standards, in the salary, in how people earn money, but at some point, as we already or we all know, it's difficult to have at the same time a growing debt, a growing deficit, and we are looked by foreign agencies to see if they downgrade or they don't downgrade Romania. Right now, we are on the last notch of investment grade, close to being non-investment at some point. But this is the overall picture at this moment.
But nonetheless, going back in time, we see that Romania has come a very long way since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it's probably doing a lot better than most people realize. There are significant challenges that need to be addressed. If you were to rank its economy within the broader Central and Eastern European region, where would you position it?
So the last decade was the best decade in let's say in the last century, because we have some GDP per capita, even if we adjust it for purchasing power parity, which is close to other CE countries. Also, the net wages are close to other countries like Hungary, like Czech Republic, still below Poland, but we catched up quite a lot in the last 10 or 15 years after the crisis in 2009, 2010. So it seems that the people, I mean also people from Romania, but also outside Romania, are not very comfortable with this way of developing, because some of them earn more, some of them have some difficulties, or they didn't catch up all this growth path. And it's a mixture of perceptions, and that is why some people consider that this growth was not equitable between several categories, social categories. Some people are benefiting of this growth, as you already mentioned.
You touched upon this just a moment ago. We see that the country has seen its public debt growing rapidly, and it's anticipated that it will cross that 60% mark next year, and that the rating is holding steady at BBB. The outlook is negative. Do you fear that this is going to further deteriorate?
It depends on how people will choose on the 18th of May. So the candidate that took the first position is skeptical against some European rules or some European tendencies. And there are people in Romania that are Eurosceptical, closer to nationalist way of doing things. And the other one on the second place is more towards European values, considering that if Romania will do well in a European context, automatically the people will do well. So this is what happened in the last 10 or 20, almost 20 years, almost like 15 years. So that is the logic that brought us up to here. But some people are questioning this kind of logic. So depending on how they choose 2 weeks from now, the risk could be higher or could be lower in terms of the country being downgraded from the international agencies. Because I talked to some bankers a while ago from banking groups already located in Romania, and they said the banks are looking for two conditions: a president and a government that goes towards Europe further. This is the first condition, and managing the budget deficit so that the agencies will not downgrade Romania. But if one of those conditions are not met, perhaps the downgrade will come this summer or perhaps in autumn.
Very interesting. But just moving back to the current situation in Romania, it's been seen as an attractive destination for services and manufacturing, and even some companies have relocated production even from Poland. Last year, we saw Michelin move lorry tires manufacturing from its main facility in Olsztyn to Romania. And there was even some talk in Poland last year that Romania is a bit of a competitor when it comes to FDI. What are your thoughts on that?
It could be a competitor in the region because up to now we had some advantages in the fiscal area. So lower fiscal taxes on, let's say, on capital, on profits. On labor, we don't have a lower taxes. They are quite similar across Europe. So one advantage was lower tax on capital, lower tax on property, but step by step, as we have a higher deficit, we cannot maintain these kind of advantages. And I know there are companies, some of them are relocating, yes, from other countries, even from Poland to Romania. But this year I have one or two examples of companies that didn't develop some investments in Romania, but they choose Poland. So having a regional competition, which is normal, Romania needs to keep some advantages, but it seems that this kind of elections might lead to losing some advantages or losing some perception, because as we all know, it's a matter also of perception. What does the country or do the people want? Do they want international capital and also Romanian capital and also big companies and also small companies? From my point of view, this will be an ideal mix, having also Romanian companies, foreign companies, big companies, small companies. But the other perception is that we will need more small Romanian companies and small entrepreneurship, which can go up to a certain level, because as we know, and Poland has also some relevant examples in the region, we need big players, we need international players, not just local or regional businesses.
Yeah, can you share those examples with us?
You mean from Romania or from
the ones that? Yeah. So you said that you have some examples that you could share.
Yes. So there is a Bosch group, the German group, that intended a second investment in Romania because they already have some companies, but they recently choose Poland for some electronic and home appliances. This is one example that the trend could reverse if we don't keep the advantages. And the other kind of example is that Romania also has some good local companies or regional companies. If we encourage them, so for instance, in e-commerce, we have eMag that is similar to Allegro in Poland. So these kind of players, if we encourage them, if we support them, they can compete at a regional or at an international level. Also, we have Romanian, but also US, so US-Romanian company that is UiPath with a headquarter in US, but with most of the employees in Romania on RPA and IT and all that. So we have some examples. It depends. It's up to us if we multiply these kind of examples or we are more on the other side of things, saying that we don't need this international environment. We can survive regionally or nationally. I know that every country, even Hungary, even Poland at some point, even Slovakia, passed through this kind of rhetoric, this kind of political forces. Some of the countries saw how it is or what it is. Some of them are still in the mix of several influences, let's say, ideologically or economical and stuff like that.
Just to focus on Simion for a moment, there are obviously challenges that need to be addressed, and I wanted to get your thoughts on how you think he might address some of the challenges plaguing the economy, like unemployment in rural areas, corruption, bureaucracy, especially in the context of business development. What are your thoughts?
We all know that the easiest thing is to promise to the people. In reality, it will be difficult for any president, no matter who will win, and for any type of government to lower the bureaucracy and in some areas the corruption, because we know that the corruption is like a tendency, is not something that it stopped in a year. There are also European countries that face different levels of corruption. In my perception, I'm not saying Romania is the most corrupted nation. It could be some other European countries could be somewhere in that on that level of corruption.
Every country has a certain level of corruption, of course.
Yeah. But the perception is that the corruption affects the citizen and also the bureaucracy, because we know some bureaucracy comes from a European level, and there is a common perception that we need to lower at a European level. We need to lower some level of bureaucracy. There are also some studies like Draghi report that said some legal requirements increased the costs of the businesses. So we don't have to deal only with US tariffs, with pressures from China, but we also have some local or regional bureaucracy. So this kind of tendency cannot be stopped in 6 months or in a year, but through some politics or administrative politics, it could be lowered or manageable. But coming back to your question, both of the candidates in the final didn't clarify too much. It's more like a perception. The Eurosceptic is promising too much, and some of the things are not feasible. Lowering taxes on labor, lowering that. You know from different examples how easy it is to promise. The other one, the European or the pro-European, is more realistic, but now it seems that the people need to hear only the good things or the promises. Somebody will improve the economy, somebody will improve the standard of living, but we know it's not so easy to do this.
And just very briefly as we wrap up, what have the other presidential candidates been saying in terms of what they will deliver for the economy, their policy proposals?
So the other candidate, the challenger, because he's on the second place, he pointed to lower bureaucracy and lower corruption. He's the mayor, currently is the mayor of Bucharest, and he was very focused on lowering corruption or not giving some authorization for some buildings. Okay, it's always a debate who is right. Either the mayor or perhaps he is too rigid on some things, but the people who vote for the mayor to be the president are preferring this kind of, let's say, exaggerations of legislation and not giving so easy some authorizations. This is one way of dealing things. I'm not saying is the best one, but it's a way that people relate to because they are fed up with this perception of corruption in different cities. It's not only in Bucharest.
Okay. Cristi Tudorescu, Managing Partner at Explore Asset Management. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that concludes The Bottom Line today. I was your host, Marie Cato. We're on every weekday at 5:10 CET on TVP World. And in the meantime, for the latest in regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com. And for more news and analysis, stay with us on TVP World. Goodbye.